Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Kingsmen Sports Podcast. Not really an episode number. We're not going to call this a full episode this week. This is going to be our NFL playoff predictions episode. We're going to go through the entire bracket. I got Shawn alongside me. Jacob is too busy working, so he wasn't able to hop on. So it'll just be Shawn and I giving our brackets. We're going to start all the way from wildcard weekend through the Super Bowl. We kind of joked about our preseason picks, how we kind of wanted to go with it. Shawn, you weren't able to. If you remember right, you thought you picked the Rams to go there. Obviously, that wasn't happening. I picked the Bucks. We'll see if I went that far. That'd be pretty bold, but it's kind of funny how things play out. And you're like, oh, yeah, we weren't really that close when it came down to it. But we're going to go ahead and start wild card weekend. We're going to hop on over to the AFC to begin. It all starts this weekend. We're going to start with the 5-4 matchup, the LA Chargers and the Jacksonville Jaguars. This is a really interesting one. All these wildcard weekend matchups are rematches from the regular season. Remember back in, I think it was week 3, the Jags just put the absolute beat down on the Chargers, and that's before the Jags really started playing their best football. The Chargers are coming off a tough loss last week against Denver, where they played their starters for most of the game and just could not figure out the Broncos. I just wasn't blown away by Jacksonville. I wasn't impressed with them against Tennessee. I'm going to take LA here. I think this is where Herbert finally gets that playoff win and this team can start moving in the right direction. I'm not sure Brandon Staley's the guy for the Chargers. I think they have too much talent. Even with if Mike Williams doesn't play this week, I think that defense is good enough, going to create some issues for Trevor Lawrence. And I'm going to go ahead and take the Chargers to pull off the seeding upset.
Yeah, I got the Chargers here too. Look, man, when you get to the playoffs, I feel like the amount of playmakers you have on a team, legit playmakers, makes a big difference here. And when I look at these two rosters, the Jacksonville roster is full of a lot of good guys, really good football players, but they are not a roster full of playmakers. And you look at the Chargers, they have playmakers on both sides of the ball. That's where the difference really came down. When this game gets down to the wire, I think it's probably going to be a close game. And when it gets down to the wire, which team's going to step up? We got a team with a lot of names and a team with a lot of guys trying to make a name for themselves. And when you're making picks, it's a lot easier to go with the guys who already have made a name for themselves.
And a little interesting note is that this will be the first playoff game for both Lawrence and Herbert. So the quarterbacks haven't ever been here. And another interesting note, a thing to look forward to for Jags fans next year that I had completely spaced on is Calvin Ridley will be back for Jacksonville next year. He could be that big playmaker for them, that big play threat. So Jacksonville turning things around. I like where they're headed right now. Let's go into now a divisional matchup on wildcard weekend, a rematch from a game that just happened a week ago, the Baltimore Ravens taking on the Cincinnati Bengals. It doesn't sound like Lamar's going to play at all in this one. It doesn't matter if it's going to be Tyler Huntley or Anthony Brown getting the start. As long as it's not Lamar Jackson, I think Cincinnati is going to be just fine. I don't know if Cincinnati's going to be necessarily 100%. Boyd and Higgins got a little beat up a week ago, but I think that they're going to be in a good spot anyway. Joe Mixon and Samaje Perine, that's a dangerous 1-2 punch on the ground. And I just don't think the Ravens are capable of scoring with Cincinnati. I think the Bengals win comfortably here and kind of get that little breathing room before going into a very tough divisional matchup.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail right on the head. No Lamar, no Baltimore. I mean, this team is not somebody who has competed at a high level. The last 6 weeks, I think he's been out. Yeah, they've hung in games. They've won a couple, but they're really just not blowing anybody away with the product that they're putting out there. And Cincinnati, I mean, I mentioned playmakers in that last game. Cincinnati is a roster just absolutely loaded with them. So it's going to be hard to pick against Cincinnati in this game. And I would expect the money line split to be heavily in Cincinnati's favor on this.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Baltimore, even though Lamar hasn't played in a long time, if it's not for him, they're not in the playoffs. They did not play well down the stretch with their backup. So I think Tyler Huntley had a bright future. He hasn't really lived up to what the Ravens were hoping he'd be here when he got the opportunity this season. So both of us going Cincinnati there. Next up, another quarterback injury. The Miami Dolphins taking on the Buffalo Bills. Tua already ruled out for this one. Skylar Thompson going to get the start. This game's going to get ugly. Buffalo's just going to put the beat down on Miami. The Bills, they seem like that DeMar Hamlin situation, which there's been a lot of good news about that. That might be what rallies this team, lights a spark under him. And I just think this offense is nearly unstoppable right now. I think the Bills win this one very, very comfortably.
Yeah, once you get to the playoffs, man, you just can't do this with a backup quarterback. Yeah, there have been teams that have done it, but we're talking third string guys, not even the normal backup. Buffalo is way too talented of a team to let Miami come to their house and beat them with a third string quarterback.
Yeah, Thompson just did not look capable. If they had Teddy Bridgewater, they might have a better shot of winning this game. I still would pick Buffalo. I'd pick Buffalo even if Tua was playing. But Thompson just doesn't have the deep ball arm. That is what makes like a Tyreek Hill and a Jalen Waddle absolute game changers. So Buffalo going to get the job done there. Both of us agree. Let's hop on over to the NFC, the wild card weekend. The Monday night game, I guess, is where we'll start since it's at the top of my bracket. Dallas taking on Tampa Bay. Tom Brady has never lost to the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys have struggled. They've really limped across the finish line despite, that win over Philly. They just are not playing good football. They did not play well against Washington. Tampa Bay's offense has looked a little bit better. We saw Mike Evans really come on strong at the end of the year. Are we going to get playoff Lenny? Will Leonard Fournette really take over? I'm going to go ahead and take Tampa Bay in this one. I just have learned if you're going against Tom Brady, you have to be very, very confident. You're going to have to really believe in whoever they're playing against, especially in the playoffs. And I just don't believe in the Cowboys right now, especially on the road in Tampa Bay. I just don't trust them.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree with you on this one. Not that I can really disagree with what you said on this game. I think it's going to be a little bit closer than some of the rest of them this weekend. But again, the Tampa Bay offense just has not been able to find the end zone this year. They can get in the red zone. Tom Brady's throwing for 4,700 yards, but they're just not putting up points. This Dallas defense is really good, and their offense has the playmakers to go out and put 40 on anybody. And I'm just not willing to, yes, we're talking Tom Brady, the GOAT, the dude with 7 rings. I'm not willing to put my money on him here this weekend.
So Shawn is a Tom Brady doubter in the playoffs. So that we're finally going separate there in that one. The next game, your Minnesota Vikings hosting the Giants. These two teams just played a few weeks ago. A pretty exciting game where you guys had to hit a long field goal as time expired to beat the Giants. They did rest their starters in week 18. Minnesota played their starters for half of the game, while New York wasn't interested in playing their starters much at all. I think the Vikings get the win here. I think the Giants, it's a successful season. Daniel Jones, he showed enough to where I think he stays as the Giants quarterback. Dable probably going to win coach of the year. That race is very, very fascinating to me. It's going to be a fun one to watch. But I just think when it comes down to playmakers, the Vikings have more. You use that word in the AFC. I'm going to use it here in this one. Saquon's an absolute stud. But when it comes down to it, can the Giants make those plays in the passing game? Vikings passing defense hasn't been outstanding, but they're not one that you're going to be able to have a below average passing attack and still take advantage of. So I'm going to take the Vikings here. I think Justin Jefferson has a pretty big game. Also look for TJ Hawkinson to catch a touchdown or two. I like the Vikings a lot here.
Yeah, I got the Vikings here as well. Script of the season, when they win, is going to be a close game. I think this is going to be a close game. I think the difference is the Vikings pass defense, like you said, has not been good. They're giving up a ton of yards, but when it has come down to it, they have made the plays. We're getting the interceptions late. The Giants have a quarterback who up into this year, he's done a decent job protecting the ball this year, but he has got a knack for throwing a silly pass, ends up getting intercepted, it gets tipped. This Vikings defense has thrived in that situation. And I think a third quarter or later turnover for the Giants is probably going to be the death of them this season.
Both going with Minnesota there. Now we head into another divisional matchup, the Seahawks and the San Francisco 49ers. This one, a lot of people think the Seahawks have a shot because it's a division game. But if you look at how these two teams played twice this season, Seahawks have shown no capability of beating San Francisco. They can't score on this defense. And while the Niners defense hasn't looked extremely great down the stretch, they still are one of the best defenses in all of football. They take the air out of the ball on offense, a heavy dose of the ground game with Christian McCaffrey and Elijah Mitchell. They're just going to ground and pound, and the Seahawks run defense has been really, really bad for most of the year. I think San Francisco really just controls the clock. I think this game's close because of that, but I think the Niners, there's never any doubt that they're going to win this game. I think they take care of business.
Yeah, I mean, I talked about with the Miami and Buffalo game not being able to win with the third string quarterback. This team might be the exception. This team has a couple of studs on offense: Christian McCaffrey, Debo, Brandon Ayuk. Those guys have really been able to carry the load. All Brock Purdy's got to do is make the right decision, which I think he is in the right system. He's got a very, very smart head coach. Seattle, also a great head coach, but like you said, they are bottom 2, but in rush, maybe at least bottom 5 in rush defense. This team's just going to put it down their throat. They're a big physical up front. If you're going to struggle defending the run, you're going to have a hard time beating the San Francisco team.
So only one disagreement on all of wild card weekend. It doesn't change our bracket at all, so we'll just move right along. Let's go to the AFC divisional round now. Division matchup. We see in a lot of these. We'll start with the Chargers and the Chiefs. This one's going to be a fun one. It always seems like these two teams play each other very close. The Chiefs coming off that bye. I can't bet against Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs, he's just a special talent. I mean, Travis Kelce has just does extremely great things, although the Chargers seem to be able to slow him down with Derwin James. Jerick McKinnon's been a revelation for this Kansas City offense. He has been outstanding, kind of that guy to take over as the big-time playmaker. Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Juju Smith-Schuster haven't been Tyreek Hill in numbers, but they've been at least solid. But it's been Jerick McKinnon that's really the difference maker. I think the Chiefs win this one. I just think it's that quarterback that's been there, done that. The oldest quarterback in the AFC side of things is Patrick Mahomes.
Scary.
He's been there multiple times. Justin Herbert, this is his first trip to the playoffs. Give me Mahomes and Andy Reid.
Yeah, I agree. I've got Kansas City here. I do think this game is probably going to go down to the final possession. But if Patrick Mahomes gets that ball in the final possession, I don't know if there's many people willing to bet against him in that situation. You mentioned Jerick McKinnon. Looking back at his career, when Adrian Peterson had his major injuries and was suspended, Jerick McKinnon was the guy in Minnesota. He left, signed a big contract. Well, not a big contract, but a good contract in San Francisco to be that lead guy. This guy is not, a below average running back. He's great catching the ball. He's explosive. I think he's really taken a lot of that pressure for losing Tyreek Hill off. Now, granted, he's coming out of the backfield, but he's just an added weapon that I don't think a lot of teams saw him still being that valuable after a couple of ACL tears. But yeah, he could definitely be a big reason why Kansas City is able to pull this out.
And another big-time playmaker that's come out of nowhere for the Chiefs is Kadarius Toney. After bringing him in from the Giants, he looks like a completely different player. So they know the buttons to push to get guys to light it up. So both of us have the Chiefs going to the AFC Championship. Now becomes an interesting one. Cincinnati taking on Buffalo. The game we thought we were going to see on that Monday night, now it's going to be, instead of in Cincinnati, it's going to be in Buffalo. I think the Bills get the win here. Josh Allen seems to be on just a tear right now. He's a different kind of quarterback, not one that is going to go out there and talk this big game, not even one that has that swagger, that arrogance about him. He's like a blue-collar quarterback is what it really feels like. The Bills' defense does give me some worries, although Cincinnati's defense isn't outstanding either. Neither team's going to really be able to do much to stop the other. I'm just going to go ahead and trust Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs to get the job done. This running game has started getting going a little bit better than it had been. It's not just Josh Allen on the ground. I'm going to take the Bills here, but this is really a coin flip game. It's going to be a fun one to watch if we do get this game.
Yeah, this one was probably the hardest one for me to pick as well. I don't know if it was the hardest, but you said it was tough to pick. I took Cincinnati here. Buffalo, I think what this is going to come down to is Josh Allen. If he gets into a situation where he's got to start forcing some throws, we have seen some big mistakes out of him this year. And I was really hard on Josh Allen, 2 years ago when the Stephon Diggs trade happened. I told you, well, at least Minnesota sent him somewhere where he's not going to be able to have a career because they don't have a quarterback. I was wrong. This dude's a stud, one of my favorite players in the league at this point. But as I said earlier, a lot of these picks come down to playmakers. The Bills have Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs. Gabe Davis is not a reliable two. Devin Singletary shows flashes, but then he disappears for 3 games. You look across the ball at Cincinnati, and they've got 3 stud receivers. They've got a tight end that can make some plays. They've got Joe Mixon, who I personally think is a little overrated, but he's a solid back. He's in a great system. And I went down to playmakers here, and it was a coin flip, but Cincinnati has more playmakers.
And even though you think Mixon's a little bit overrated, they still have P. Ryan, who's one of the better number 2 backs in the NFL. So that rushing attack's just fine. So we have a disagreement in the AFC Championship. Let's go over to the NFC divisional round. Starting with I have Tampa Bay and Philly. You have Dallas and Philly. I'll go ahead and go first. The Eagles give me a lot of issues right now. Even with Jalen Hurts coming back from injury, now he's going to have that week off, so maybe he gets right. Again, I just have to have no questions about the team I'm picking to beat Tom Brady in the playoffs. I have questions about the Eagles, so I'm going with the Buccaneers. I just think that what I've seen from Mike Evans as of late, they have that deep ball threat. They have something to at least open up the field a little bit, maybe get Godwin a little bit more open underneath. I like these young tight ends. Cade Otton really came on strong. I think he has a very, very bright future. The offensive line is a big, big problem with Tampa Bay. But if you can start getting some of those quick passes that we've seen Brady do for many, many years, it completely nullifies the pass rush of Philadelphia. I'm going to go with Tampa Bay to get the job done here, and a pretty big upset.
Yeah, how many Super Bowls and paychecks has Tom Brady cashed off of a 5-yard and under passing game?
Yeah.
A lot for a lot of years. Yeah, I got Philly Dallas in this game. I agree with you. Philadelphia is giving me some scares. They haven't been great the last 3-4 weeks ever since Jalen got hurt. They can throw the ball when they need to, and their rushing attack with Jalen in there is quite scary in my opinion. Dallas, I still have some question marks as to whether Dak is going to be able to produce in the big moment. Dallas as a team, the last 15 years just hasn't been clutch. I think Jalen's got that clutch trait, so I picked Philly here.
So we definitely went all over the place here. The NFC side for us looks way different. Let's hop into the game we have the same, though. The Vikings taking on the San Francisco 49ers. The good news for you is I think this is the first time you guys lose close. I don't think it's going to be a blowout because of what San Francisco does. They run the football. I just do not think that when it comes down to it, I know you're going to disagree, but it's still Kirk Cousins. It feels like it's inevitable. He has a big turnover. And I'm not saying that it's going to be him making a terrible decision. San Francisco's defense is opportunistic. They can force you to make mistakes. I think that's what it comes down to. I think just a one turnover by Cousins, he's going to have to play nearly perfect to beat San Francisco. One turnover could be all she wrote. Also, I haven't been really blown away by Dalvin Cook. He hasn't had to do much this year. I still think he's one of the premier backs in the NFL. He's not going to be able to find success against this Niners defensive front. The Vikings offensive line is also banged up, which gives me the most concern out of everything in this game. I'm going to go ahead and take the Niners. A close ball game, but I think San Francisco gets the win.
Yeah, and if you look at Minnesota's track record, the last 5 years, I've watched as many of their games as possible over the last 5 years. These teams with the big physical fronts just demolish us. Our offensive line is more of this agile. We do a lot of movement on the offensive line to open up stuff, and we are capable of being overpowered. And this San Francisco team is a team that overpowers just about anybody in front of them, maybe other than like the Eagles offensive line or something. The Eagles got a good offensive line. That's the big part that scares me. I think Minnesota's run, as much of it hurts me to say, ends here. It's going to be a great season for them, but it really has nothing to do with San Francisco's offense, has everything to do with that defensive front for me.
Yeah, Vikings healthy offensive line, I still think has issues with that defensive front, but being beat up, you're just asking a lot from guys who probably aren't capable of it. Yeah, there's not many backup offensive linemen that can slow down this Niners front. There's not a lot of starting linemen that can slow down this Niners front.
Yeah, and I'll add into that, your Kirk Cousins point. as again, somebody who has watched a lot of these games that he's struggled in, not 100% his fault. He's a pocket passer. Everybody knows he's going to stay in that pocket as long as possible. When he's getting offensive linemen backed up into him, yeah, he tends to force stuff. And when he struggles is because the offensive line has struggled.
And also when they fall behind, it seems like that's when he's forced. I mean, I don't want to go back. I don't want to talk about the Packers. The Packers are done. They were terrible this year. But in that game, the first 2 picks, not Cousins' fault at all in that. It was 2 deflected passes, and then they get down big, and he tries to force 1 pass, and that ended up being the 3rd interception. So Minnesota's got to keep it close and really just let him do his thing. If they can keep it within a score game, they've got a shot. But once they start falling behind, if it's in the second half, couple possession game, that's where I get concerned about Cousins.
See, and I disagree. I think Kirk plays his best ball from behind in the 3rd and 4th quarter.
We're going to find out because they're going to be behind in that one. Let's go now to our championship games. We'll start with the AFC Championship. For me, it's Buffalo and Kansas City. It was just announced that they will play in Atlanta for this one because they have to go to a neutral site. This is the game that I think a lot of people had circles wanting to see once again. Buffalo and Kansas City, Allen against Mahomes. It's the current rival. It's the Manning versus Brady of this era. I think this is the time where Manning finally gets his win. Manning this time being Josh Allen. I think Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills do beat Kansas City. This is where it comes down to the Chiefs don't have that actual deep ball threat. Marquez Valdez-Scantling is the guy. Travis Kelce, he's not a deep ball guy. He can turn short passes into big plays. Stephon Diggs can take the top off of a defense over the top. Gabe Davis, I know you're not as high on him, also has that capability. I'd put him probably ahead of Marquez Valdez-Scantling, but not by a significant amount. It just feels like Buffalo's a team of destiny right now. I know picking on something like a DeMar Hamlin situation is bold. It's risky, but I think that's what this team can rely on. I think you're going to see DeMar Hamlin show up to one of these games and the Bills aren't losing with him in attendance. I think Buffalo gets the job done. I think Allen finally beats Mahomes and gets to that Super Bowl and caps off an incredible year for Buffalo with an opportunity to hoist the Lombardi Trophy.
Yeah, I think as long as Kansas City can actually make it to this point in the season, whether they play Buffalo or Cincinnati, which we both agree is going to be one of those 2 teams, that game's going to be electric. I have Kansas City versus Cincinnati. Joe Burrow does not lose to the Chiefs. And while I believe all great streaks come to an end, they have more playmakers once again. I think Joe Burrow and Cincinnati is going to be out to right the wrong that happened to him in the Super Bowl last year. I see them going back for a 2nd straight year, not where I thought that the story would start at the beginning of the year. I would really like to see Buffalo make it. I just don't think it's going to happen. And I got Cincinnati here. So that's where I'm picking. I'm going to stand behind it. Again, I'm not going to be disappointed if any of those top 3 teams make it because it's going to be a great game no matter what with them in it.
Yeah, I'm right there with you there. Those 3 teams can just play each other forever, and I'll be happy. On the other side of things, the NFC, it's kind of more of a black and blue, going to take your punches. It's going to be physical, old school style football. My NFC championship is Tampa Bay and San Francisco. Tom Brady taking on Brock Purdy. Never thought you'd see this game. Never thought you'd see it in an NFC championship. Before the season started, I picked Tampa Bay. They were my Super Bowl picks. I had them beating Buffalo. So coming into this one, I'm like, I can really just roll with it. I can't, though. I think the Niners win this game. I think George Kittle has really come on strong. He's a guy who a 3rd-string quarterback can really rely on. They love their tight ends. And with Kittle playing like we've seen prime Kittle play before, this rushing attack, Tampa Bay is going to have a tough time coming back from this one. Their offensive line, again, just like Minnesota, gives me concern against a defensive front this good like San Francisco has. So I'm going to take the Niners to beat Tom Brady in the Bucs.
Yeah, I've got Philly and San Francisco. And, you mentioned the Purdy to George Kittle connection that has happened. I think George Kittle has caught like 6 or 7 touchdowns in the last 4 weeks. It's been insane. I think I said the last time we recorded that Brock, out of the quarterbacks on that roster, Brock Purdy is the best fit for that system. And it is hard to beat a team that has that much talent on defense. And then you get a quarterback in there that has weapons, guys that can make plays for him. and then you get a quarterback that fits that well in that system, I think that's hard to beat. Now, we got the same thing in Philly, though. Jalen Hurts, their offensive system that they run, kind of the RPO, the read option, that, he's the perfect quarterback in that system. That San Francisco defense is just something to be reckoned with. They got Fred Warner in the secondary or in the middle linebacker. Look for him to probably spy Jalen Hurts a lot. And he's athletic as they come, as hard of a hitter as they come, as good as they come on the interior linebacker position. He's going to have a big game for San Francisco to keep this thing in control and win it. But I think he's up for the task.
And I want to put in a little note. You were talking about the systems of both teams. San Francisco, their system's been there. They've perfected that system. Sirianni and the Eagles are still working on it. They've only been doing it together a couple of years. So that system still a work in progress, although they are clearly on the right track. So I think that might, in your NFC Championship, if that comes to fruition, that might be a big key in that one as well. Now we go to our Super Bowl. For me, I've got Buffalo and San Francisco. You've got Cincinnati and San Francisco. I'll start Bills and Niners. This is a very interesting one. This is the golden boy, Josh Allen, the guy who's supposed to be the future of the quarterback position. Him and Mahomes supposed to be that golden generation. I'll throw Burrow in there. You have to throw Burrow in there at this point. Against Mr. Irrelevant, Brock Purdy, just a pick at that point in the season. Never thought he'd even see the field with Trey Lance and Jimmy G. Guess what? He's going on this charge, Nick Foles-esque for the San Francisco 49ers. Nick Foles had a happy ending. Brock Purdy is not going to. I got the Bills winning the Super Bowl, taking out the 49ers. This Buffalo offense, Josh Allen, there's not many quarterbacks in the NFL like him. I'm going to go ahead and say there's no quarterback like him. He's an absolute tank. He's going to run you over, or he's going to throw it absolutely 60 yards with pinpoint precision. This guy's a freak of nature. And again, thinking about watching him, I watched him with Wyoming play at Washington State in college. He didn't look that impressive. He has absolutely taken big time strides. He's the guy that kids can look up to as well. And I think this Buffalo Bills team finally hoists the Lombardi Trophy, takes this one and completes what's been an emotional, wild roller coaster year for the Bills, but they finish it as Super Bowl champions.
Yeah, imagine how good that would feel for Josh Allen to make it to the Super Bowl and finally right how he felt they got wronged last year in the playoffs as they got knocked out in the final seconds after taking the lead in the final seconds. You can't write a script better for that team, especially with the DeMar Hamlin situation. And I really think that's the wild card. We don't know. I mean, obviously that can be a huge positive for them to rally around. But at this point in the season, it can also be a big distraction and put a lot of pressure on guys. So that is one thing I'll point out there. Super Bowl for me, I've got Cincinnati versus San Francisco. As good as San Francisco's defense is, the way that you're going to beat a big aggressive front like that is be able to get the ball out quick, have your playmakers, be able to throw the side screen to T. Higgins and watch him break it for, 14 to 60 yards at any given point in time. This one came down to playmakers. Once again, Cincinnati's got a few playmakers on defense. They've got a plethora of playmakers on offense. They are going to be able to run the ball a little bit. They got it. Joe Mixon's not a small back. He's going to be able to go and take some hits, hopefully take some pressure off of Joe Burrow. I've got Cincinnati and Joe Burrow coming back for redemption this year, winning the Super Bowl.
So we both kind of have these redemption arcs. Yours lost in the Super Bowl last year. Mine lost an absolute heartbreaker. So I've got Bills. You've got Bengals. Both of us have AFC. So we will see how it all plays out. But that's going to do it for this episode of the Kingsmen Sports Podcast. We thank you guys for hanging out with us all NFL season. We know we've had some inconsistencies getting videos out. We are officially going to one episode every 2 weeks, so you won't see us for a couple of weeks. We'll come back just before or just after the division round, before AFC and NFC championships. We'll kind of recap what's gone on. And also we got World Baseball Classic coming up soon, March Madness coming up soon, NBA just in the thick of things. So there's a lot of exciting stuff, but we will have one episode every 2 weeks coming to you from now on. So be on the lookout for that. But I want to thank Shawn for hopping on. We hope to have Jacob back here in a couple of weeks. More Mount Rushmore coming your way. But that's going to do it for the first episode of 2023. We'll see you in a couple of weeks here on the Kingsmen Sports Podcast.